The Zakarian exploration vessel Eternal Seeker emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Sol system, its crystalline hull gleaming under distant starlight. Commander Nixis watched the blue-green third planet through all 4 of her sensor stalks, her translucent body pulsing with scientific curiosity. The primitive radio signals they detected suggested intelligent life, but the initial scans were troubling. These readings must be incorrect, she chittered to her science officer, Vax. No advanced species could survive in such conditions. Vax's tentacles danced across the holographic interface, triple-checking the data. The readings are accurate, Commander. The atmosphere is a volatile mix of corrosive gases. Temperature variations exceed 150 degrees. The gravity is nearly double what any spacefaring race can tolerate. And the magnetic field. He paused, his bioluminescent patches flickering with concern. It's strong enough to disable our navigation systems. The bridge crew fell silent, their crystalline bodies shifting colors in distress. The Zakarian Confederation had mapped millions of worlds, but none like this. Their civilization had evolved in the carefully controlled environments of deep space habitats, their bodies adapted to minimal gravity and stable conditions. Yet we detected radio transmissions, Nixis mused, her central core glowing with determination. Show me the surface. The holographic display sprang to life, revealing sprawling cities across continents. Vehicles moved through the turbulent atmosphere. Most shocking of all, bipedal creatures walked about completely unprotected from their lethal environment. Impossible, whispered Vax. They're not just surviving. They're thriving. Look at these population centers. They've built in frozen wastes, scorching deserts, even underwater. The crew watched in horrified fascination as a human aircraft punched through the thick atmosphere, navigating wind speeds that would tear apart a Zakarian vessel. Their sensors tracked humans climbing mountains in temperatures cold enough to crystallize Zakarian bodies, swimming in pressures that would crush their environmental suits, and somehow maintaining complex technology in conditions that should prevent its existence. They're not using any advanced environmental systems, Nixis realized, her color shifting to deep violet with the weight of the discovery. They evolved naturally in these conditions. Their entire biology must be. She struggled to find the words. They're environmental extremophiles, walking disaster survivors. Commander, Vax interrupted, his tentacles writhing with urgency. I've analyzed their communications. They're not a primitive species struggling against their environment. They actively seek out its most dangerous aspects for recreation. They intentionally expose themselves to radiation, massive pressure changes, and temperature extremes. For fun. Nixis felt her crystalline structure vibrate with the implications. The Confederation had always assumed advanced civilization required carefully controlled conditions. Their entire understanding of technological progress was based on achieving environmental stability first. Yet here was a species that had developed advanced technology, while constantly battling conditions that would kill most races instantly. Prepare a probe, she ordered, then quickly added, but keep it at high altitude. If these conditions are their normal. She left the thought unfinished. As the probe descended, they watched humans going about their daily lives, completely unbothered by an environment that would be classified as an extinction-level event on any Confederation world. Children played in storms that would shred their ships. Workers built in heat that would melt their hull plating. Sailors navigated waters corrosive enough to dissolve their environmental suits. Send an emergency transmission to command, Nixis ordered, her core pulsing with urgent purple light. Classification. First contact protocol override. We haven't discovered primitives surviving against impossible odds. We've found something far more significant, a species that evolved to master conditions we deemed unsurvivable. The question isn't how they survive here. It's what kind of power such a species might wield if we provoke them. The crew watched as a massive storm system moved across the planet's surface, battering the human cities with forces that would destroy their most hardened military vessels. The cities endured, their inhabitants barely noting the apocalyptic conditions raging around them. And Vax, Nixus added softly, her color fading to cautionary amber. Recommend immediate implementation of non-interference protocols. These humans aren't primitive survivors on a harsh world. They're the masters of conditions we considered impossible, and we need to approach them with that understanding, or we risk learning firsthand just how powerful a species has to be to call this deadly environment home. War Commander Krillix of the Zakarian battle fleet ignored the warnings from the exploration vessel. His crystalline form pulsed with aggressive red light as he reviewed their defensive capabilities. 10,000 ships, the finest the Confederation had produced, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. These humans might have adapted to their hellish world, but they would soon learn the difference between surviving nature and facing an advanced civilization. "Begin the invasion," he ordered, his voice resonating through the command crystal. "Target their major population centers." The first wave of ships entered Earth's atmosphere. Immediately, warning signals screamed across the fleet. The magnetic field twisted their targeting systems. Hurricane-force winds buffeted vessels designed for the calm of space. Atmospheric friction heated their hulls beyond safety tolerances. "Press the attack," Krillix demanded. "Show these primitives true power." The humans responded not with panic, but with methodical precision. Their fighters, crude by Confederation standards, sliced through storm conditions that were shredding the alien fleet, while Zakarian pilots struggled against gravity that strained their environmental suits to breaking point. Human pilots executed maneuvers that should have turned their bodies to paste. "Impossible," Krillix whispered as another squadron was lost. His ships, designed to operate in the sterile perfection of space, were being overwhelmed by an environment the humans navigated with casual ease. The battle shifted to the ground. Zakarian troops, even in their most advanced combat suits, found themselves at the mercy of Earth's endless environmental attacks. Their crystalline forms cracked in the temperature variations. The gravity drained their energy reserves. The very air corroded their equipment. Meanwhile, human soldiers moved like ghosts through conditions that killed Zakarians by the thousands. They appeared out of blinding snowstorms, emerged from boiling deserts, struck from the crushing depths of oceans. They didn't fight the environment. They weaponized it. "They're not using any environmental protection," reported his tactical officer in disbelief. "They're using our own safety requirements against us. Every time we try to establish a protective bubble of suitable conditions, they shatter it and let their world do the killing." A human missile struck nearby, and Krillix watched in horror as his ship's environmental systems failed. Earth's atmosphere began seeping through the breach. His crystalline form started to fracture under the savage gravity. The corrosive air ate away at his command systems. "Full retreat," he gasped, his color fading to pale defeat. "We never stood a chance. We thought we were invading their world, but this planet itself is their strongest weapon. They don't need advanced technology to defeat us. They just need to let their homeworld do what it does naturally." As the shattered remnants of his fleet flowed into space, Krillix felt a new emotion. Fear, not of the humans' weapons or technology, but of what it meant to evolve on such a world. His people had spent millennia creating perfect environments for their civilization to flourish. Humans had spent their history mastering a world that should have killed them. "Send word to the Confederation," he ordered as his flagship limped away from Earth. "This planet isn't a target for conquest. It's a prison evolved into a fortress, and its inhabitants aren't victims of their environment. They're apex predators who turned a death world into their hunting ground." The last thing his sensors showed him before jumping to hyperspace was a human news broadcast, casually reporting the alien invasion as a minor incident between coverage of a devastating hurricane and an earthquake. Disasters that would have ended civilizations on other worlds, but which humans treated as routine inconveniences. Krillix finally understood the true meaning of terror, a species that called such a lethal world home, and had grown so powerful they sought its killing conditions as nothing more than a minor annoyance to their daily lives. The Zakarian research vessel Truth Seeker maintained a careful orbit above Earth, its reinforced hull barely adequate for the planet's intense magnetic field. Chief researcher Mira X, her crystalline form shimmering with scientific focus, reviewed the latest data with growing astonishment. Their cellular structure defies everything we know about biology, she announced to her research team. They don't just tolerate these conditions, they require them to function. The holographic display showed human cellular activity. Their bodies maintained stable internal temperatures despite external fluctuations that would shatter Zakarian forms. Their bones, developed under crushing gravity, possessed strength-to-weight ratios that seemed to violate physics. Their immune systems fought off microscopic invaders that would devastate other species. Look at their repair mechanisms, assistant researcher Zen noted, his energy form pulsing with excitement. They don't avoid radiation damage. They actively repair it. Their cells are in constant warfare with their environment, and they're winning. The research team had watched humans swim in water cold enough to crystallize their own bodies, climb mountains in air too thin for most species to survive, and routinely endure pressure changes that would liquefy Zakarian forms. But it was their adaptability that truly shocked the scientists. They're not using any advanced technology, Mira X observed, studying footage of humans in various environments. Their technology exists to make their already incredible tolerances even greater. They build in frozen wastes not because they've mastered environmental control, but because they can already survive there with minimal protection. The implications shook the foundations of Zakarian science. Their civilization had achieved spaceflight by creating perfect, controlled environments. Humans had done it while embracing environmental chaos. They hadn't needed to master their environment because they'd mastered themselves. Their young are even more remarkable, Zen reported. They're born completely vulnerable, yet have a survival rate that suggests. He paused, his energy flickering with disbelief. They're not just surviving these conditions, they're using them to become stronger. Mira X's form pulsed with revelation. We've been approaching this wrong. We thought their world was trying to kill them. But it's not their enemy, it's their forge. Every challenge their environment presents has shaped them into something stronger. The research team watched as humans deliberately sought out extreme conditions for recreation, climbing frozen mountains, diving into crushing depths, testing themselves against their world's deadliest aspects. They weren't fighting their environment. They were dancing with it, using its challenges to push their already remarkable capabilities further. Prepare our findings for transmission to the Confederation, Mira X ordered. Classification. Paradigm shift. We need to completely reconceptualize our understanding of environmental adaptation. These humans haven't just survived impossible conditions, they've turned them into advantages. As she prepared the report, Mira X reflected on what this meant for the future. The Zakarians had spent millennia trying to perfect their environment. Humans had spent their history perfecting themselves instead. And in doing so, they'd achieved something the Zakarians had never considered possible. They'd turned what should have been a death world into the crucible of an incredibly resilient civilization. Add a final note, she told her team. Recommendation. Immediate diplomatic contact. We have much to learn from a species that doesn't just endure the impossible. They thrive on it. And we need to approach them not as primitive survivors, but as masters of adaptation who might teach us how to transcend our own limitations. Ambassador Elena Chen stood at the viewport of the specially constructed diplomatic station, watching the crystalline forms of the Zakarian delegation approach in their environmental suits. The station represented a unique challenge, maintaining conditions that would keep both species alive during negotiations. One half operated at Earth normal conditions. The other maintained the carefully controlled environment the Zakarians required. Between them stood a transparent barrier of advanced materials, allowing face-to-face communication while preventing environmental crossover. They still don't quite believe we're real, Elena mused to her aide. She'd reviewed the Zakarian reports about humanity. To them, Humans were environmental monsters, creatures that should not exist, yet somehow dominated a world that would kill most spacefaring races instantly. The Zakarian ambassador, Serval, approached the barrier. Their crystalline form shifted through colors of diplomatic greeting, though Elena noted the underlying flickers of nervous amber. Even through their environmental suit, Earth's gravity pulled at them uncomfortably. "We appreciate your willingness to meet." Serval's translated voice came through the comm system. "Though we admit your ability to stand there unprotected in conditions we consider lethal remains disconcerting." Elena smiled. "Just as we find it remarkable that you've built an interstellar civilization while requiring such carefully controlled conditions. Perhaps that's exactly why our species need each other." The negotiations that followed revealed just how vast the gulf between their species was. The Zakarians had achieved space travel by creating perfect environments. Humans had done it by adapting to overcome environmental challenges. Their approaches to everything from technology to biology were fundamentally different. "Your species treats radiation as an enemy to be shielded against," Elena explained. "We learned to repair radiation damage at the cellular level. You avoid extreme pressures. We learned to thrive in them. Every challenge your people solve through environmental control, we solve through adaptation. But how do you maintain technology in such conditions?" Serval asked. "Our equipment fails under far less stress than your world routinely produces. We built it to be as resilient as we are," Elena replied. "We never had the luxury of perfect conditions, so we developed technology that could handle imperfection. Our greatest innovations often came from finding ways to work with our environment rather than against it." As the diplomatic talks progressed, both species began to see the potential in their differences. The Zakarians' mastery of environmental control complemented humanity's adaptability. Together, they could explore worlds that neither species could handle alone. "We've been seeking perfection," Serval realized during one session. "You've learned to master imperfection. Perhaps that's the key to true advancement, not creating perfect conditions, but becoming strong enough to thrive in imperfect ones." The breakthrough came when Elena proposed a joint exploration initiative. Zakarian environmental control technology combined with human adaptation techniques could open up vast new territories for both species. The Zakarians could learn to extend their environmental tolerances, while humans could benefit from their expertise in creating controlled conditions when needed. "Our differences aren't weaknesses," Elena concluded in her final address. "They're opportunities. Your species mastered space by controlling it. We mastered it by adapting to it. Together, we can achieve things neither of us could do alone." As the historic accords were signed, Elena reflected on how far both species had come. The Zakarians had moved past their initial fear of humanity's environmental resilience, while humans had learned to appreciate the benefits of environmental control. They had turned their fundamental differences into a foundation for cooperation, proving that the path to the stars could be found both through controlling nature and learning to thrive within it. 10 years after the historic Earth-Zakarian Accords, the joint research vessel, Adaptable Truth, emerged from hyperspace near a previously unexplored system. Its hybrid crew represented the culmination of both species' strengths. Zakarian environmental control technology merged with human adaptability. Dr. Sarah Chen, daughter of Ambassador Elena Chen, stood on the bridge alongside her Zakarian colleague, lead researcher Vix Ren. The ship's revolutionary design allowed both species to work together without environmental barriers, using selective field technology to maintain different conditions in overlapping spaces. "Preliminary scans show a potentially habitable world," Vix Ren reported, their crystalline form gleaming with excitement. "But the conditions are extreme." The planet below them made Earth look tame. Massive storms swept across its surface. The gravity fluctuated due to an unstable core. The atmosphere switched between caustic and inert as competing chemical processes fought for dominance. "A decade ago, we would have marked this as uninhabitable," Sarah noted. "Now it's an opportunity." The changes in both species over their years of collaboration were remarkable. Zakarian scientists had begun developing ways to temporarily strengthen their crystalline forms, inspired by human cellular regeneration. Humans had adapted Zakarian environmental control technology to push their already impressive tolerances even further. "The first landing team is ready," Vix Wren announced. The team consisted of both humans and Zakarians, each contributing their unique strengths to the mission. As they descended through the turbulent atmosphere, Sarah reflected on how far they'd come. The Zakarians had initially seen humans as environmental monsters, terrifying creatures that thrived in lethal conditions. Now they understood that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their tolerance for harsh conditions. It was their ability to adapt and grow stronger from challenges. The landing craft touched down in a valley swept by winds that would have torn apart earlier ships. The hybrid team emerged, protected by a combination of human resilience and Zakarian environmental fields. They moved with practiced coordination, each species handling the aspects of exploration they were best suited for. "Look at this," Sarah called out, examining readings from a geological formation. "The mineral structures here. They're reorganizing themselves in response to the environmental changes. It's evolution in action, just like Earth's history." Vix Wren's form pulsed with understanding. Life finds a way to adapt to any conditions, given enough time. Your species learned that lesson on Earth. Now you're teaching us. The real breakthrough came when they discovered microscopic organisms in the planet's shifting seas. Like the humans of Earth, these primitive life forms had evolved to thrive in conditions most species would consider impossible. They were already adapting, already growing stronger from their world's challenges. "We're not just exploring space anymore," Sarah realized. "We're learning the fundamental lesson of life itself. It's not about finding perfect conditions or creating them. It's about becoming strong enough to thrive in imperfection." As the adaptable truth continued its mission, mapping worlds that neither species could have explored alone, they discovered more evidence that life's true power lay in adaptation. Humanity's journey from struggling primitives to masters of their death world hadn't been unique. It was part of a universal pattern. The Zakarians had feared humanity's environmental resilience. Now they celebrated it, recognizing that the very conditions they had deemed impossible had forged humanity into something remarkable. And humans, in turn, had learned that there was wisdom in the Zakarian approach to environmental control. Together, they were rewriting the galaxy's understanding of what was possible. They proved that civilization could arise not just in perfect conditions, but in the crucible of adversity. That strength came not from avoiding challenges, but from embracing them and growing stronger. The legacy of Earth's deadly environment had become not a warning, but an inspiration. It showed that life's greatest achievements came not from conquering nature or hiding from it, but from learning to dance with it, to grow with it, to become something greater through the very challenges that seemed impossible to overcome.